Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness some scenes from the next attraction to play this theater. This picture, truly one of the most unusual ever filmed, contains scenes which, under no circumstances, should be viewed by anyone with a heart condition or anyone who is easily upset. La, 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 la. That's cool. La, 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 la. That's trash. La, 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 la. That's cool. La, 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 la. That's trash.
That's trash.
Hello and welcome to That's Cool, That's Trash, the podcast where we watch a psychotronic movie online, then get together on Skype to break down the crazy. I'm Matt Howell, and I'm serving up a little bit of a bonus episode here. We're currently working on our final Halloween episode of the show's run, and our guest is Mr. Joseph Dufresne, who is a Portland area horror host and a host to the entity that is Uncle Eerie Lee Shivers. This is a little bonus episode because our conversation has been running long and we had to actually stretch it out into 2 nights. So I cut out a little slice just for you guys to have something to chew on until the episode's finished. So far, we've been talking about the phenomenon of horror TV hosts and local horror film festivals, and we took a little dogleg side journey into the horror-renaissance of the 21st century. We'll be talking about Mark Polonia's Halloween Night from 2009 and concluding our Halloween discussion this evening and publishing that episode tomorrow. But right now, I thought you might like a little taste of what had to go on the cutting room floor because it was all good stuff. So here is Mr. Joseph Dufresne and myself talking about the horror renaissance. Enjoy.
I think contemporary horror is as good as it's been in a long time. I think that that sort of just in the same way that things like comic books became sort of socially acceptable. I think that with the rise of things like, heavy metal, for example, is probably more popular than it's been, maybe even when it was first around. And I think that there is the collective unconsciousness sort of works that way. It's sort of like people sort of latch on to these new things or things that are new to them, and that opens up a gateway to some other thing. And I think that, I like to think that that's true. I found myself sort of really inspired or sort of like really excited about kind of what's going on with just, whether it be horror fiction or, obviously horror films, but just everything that's involved in that within the culture, the larger culture, whatever.
Well,
so, yeah, I think you're also...
Actually, I want to talk to you about that. One of my questions I want to ask you about was there's a lot of talk about the horror renaissance that's going on, particularly in films these days. I was curious about your take on that, but it sounds like I know what that is now. Do you agree? I mean, some people say, blah. I don't know. Some people are saying it's just this artsy stuff that's getting critical acclaim, and that's all the only reason they're saying this. I don't know if I agree with that, but what's your take on this horror renaissance talk of the last 10 years?
Well, so here's it's funny that you ask, because I've actually been in a state of minor turmoil for the last, I don't know, what's one more than 78. So basically, for the last week or so, I've been sort of in a bit of a funk over it, only because I've finally gotten around. I have a 10-month-old daughter, which means me getting out to see films doesn't exist right now. So I'm a little behind on a lot of the sort of more current sort of offerings, but my wife and I finally managed to sort of sit down and watch a bunch of them recently. And unfortunately, I didn't like a lot of them. I was super excited about. I didn't like. I was super annoyed and upset about the ending of Midsummer, which again I really wanted to like it, and I really liked the first 3/4 of the film. Likewise, and this one is almost sort of, it's hard to even talk about, but I was very disappointed by Us. I thought the first 2 acts of that film were fantastic. I think that he is a fantastic filmmaker. I think his visual eye is amazing. I think his understanding of narrative is great. I think the people he chooses. I'm talking about Jordan Peele. So, and I really liked. Holy crap! What's the name of his first film?
Get Out.
Get Out. Thank you. I don't know why. Yes, Get Out. I think there were some minor issues with it. Very like just asshole film snob issues with it. But I think overall it was a fantastic film. I think it deserves all the sort of accolades it got. I think, again, you're talking about somebody actually sort of putting like communicating a voice in a genre of film that sort of, I won't say didn't exist before, but had never reached the mainstream. And I also knew that dude. Did you ever watch Key and Peele?
Oh God, yes. We're obsessed with it.
So me and my wife, like, we were watching like the second episode. And you're like, these motherfuckers are horror fans, because like every episode has something. And so, and I was like, and I love that. I love it when somebody wears their interest on their sleeves. And again, I think, in my opinion, the 2 hardest genres to achieve from a film or visual narrative storytelling standpoint is comedy and horror.
Oh God, yes, easily.
I think it is both are a much tighter, wire to balance on than any other genre. And if you
agree.
And yeah, and I think that I'm not surprised he is such a talented filmmaker, and as a result, I've been nothing but a huge fan. But honestly, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I think that it was a great setup of a film. I thought it had great elements to it, but the actual sort of twist, discovery, sort of what actually like the untethered, the story behind that, I think was just unfortunately nonsense. I thought it was just there were so many plot holes in it, and I think that just even the concept was very weak. And I thought there was a lot more interesting or sort of just logical sort of, avenues you could have gone down to achieve the same goal that he was going for. And I was I was really disappointed. It was really hard because, again, it's like, I understand that from a cultural standpoint, it's not just about the art, that you have to respect what this particular voice is doing for an entire audience. And then you also realize that there's, racial implications that maybe the experience I'm having as a white dude isn't the same. Like, I'm missing part of the story because of who I am.
Right.
Not wanting to disrespect.
We're welcome, but maybe it's not for us.
Exactly. And I really struggle with that, but I just, honestly, I just think it's not the best. I think for the script, like, there was an issue with the script or with the plot, and yeah. And then I don't. What is your take on Rob Zombie?
Honestly, I feel like I kind of missed the boat on was The House of a Thousand Corpses his first movie?
Yeah.
So I kind of missed his it's hard to, he's not my thing. Like, I've heard him interviewed tons of times talking about horror with other horror filmmakers, and I totally dig him as a person. Not a huge fan of his music, and I'm not super into his movies. The only one I've seen was The Devil's Rejects, which was okay. I see what he was kind of riffing on and what his vibe was, and all. I don't really respond to it as much, I guess.
So, that makes total sense to me. I really liked House of a Thousand Corpses. I appreciate it more now. At the time, I was super into that movie until the whole Dr. Satan thing comes out at the very end of the movie, where he decides it's going to be an entirely different story. And like, he's just going to add this random sort of more supernatural or whatever sort of over the top element at the very last like 15 minutes of the movie. I thought it was strange, but I can kind of appreciate it now more, kind of knowing that he was just having fun. Like it's hard in that case. I'm doing the opposite of separating the artist from the art, and like I kind of understand like who he is as a person, and that sort of altered my appreciation for the film. And then I think it was a very bold move as a filmmaker to go from that, a very lighthearted, campy vibe, to Devil's Reject, which I think for what it is a very, well-made, accomplished film. I think it tonally, it hits everything, or it accomplishes everything he was trying to do.
Yeah.
I think visually, I think I think he can, weirdly enough, I think he does that 70s throwback visual, that cinematography style, probably better than anyone.
Yeah.
Even the Halloween films, which, they are for the most part train wrecks of films, but I think visually he still did some pretty cool stuff. And then Lords of Salem, again, seems to be a theme, but I think the ending fell apart completely. But I thought he was doing some pretty cool, vibey, psychedelic shit in that movie that was exactly what he was, he was homaging. The Wicker Man, some of the Giallo stuff, but just that European horror vibe, that 70s European horror vibe, psychedelic, occult, witchery. And yeah, so I think that he has whatever as a filmmaker, but I thought that Three from Hell was fucking terrible.
That's the newest one, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was just a sort of I don't want to give anything away to anybody who's interested in seeing it that's listening to this, but I would say that the ending, again, there's only one way to end that story and have it have been effective. And instead of that, he went the exact opposite way.
Okay.
Which basically rendered the entire point of even doing a third film in that storyline completely pointless. No art is pointless if you're whatever, you're speaking from your soul. But as far as from an audience perspective, the movie is fucking pointless. And I was bummed out about it. And so I watched this whole length of films that I ranged from pretty excited about to super excited about. And I didn't like any of them. And I was like, there's like sort of like a cultural darling thing happening where horror is hip in the art film community. And so like critics are scared to, go against the grain of that. And then of course, like I said, Jordan Peele, because he's such a phenomenon, has such high currency from a cultural standpoint that people are willing to sometimes overlook artistic flaws
probably that. I think that, like you were saying earlier, that horror and comedy are the hardest genres to make because they have to put so much out there, and to make, it's the same way that a horror novel is so much harder to write than a scary short story. Like, for instance, like comedy wise, like the movie Old School with like Luke Wilson and Will Ferrell and whatever, like that, the first 30 minutes of that movie are hilarious. And then once the concept has to be followed through to its conclusion, its dramatic conclusion, it's terrible. Like the last 2/3 of the movie are shit. And a lot of times it happens with horror movies. And I feel like horror movies shit the bed in the last act a lot because it is a magic act. It is illusion that's going on. And then once you have to follow through to the logical conclusion or the dramatic conclusion, it's a hard act to follow. Have you seen It Follows?
I did, yeah.
I thought the first hour of that film was freaking amazing. I was like, oh my God, this guy's a genius. And then once it became an Invisible Monster movie, I thought it was terrible. I thought the ending of that last act was terrible.
I don't know if I thought it was terrible, but yes, I definitely felt like it was not. I think if you were not a horror film person and you walked into that film, I could definitely see why, as somebody, if somebody wasn't well versed in horror films, especially horror films of the last 10 to 15 years, I could see why that movie would be so sort of impactful. Mm-hmm. But I kind of because I've seen a lot of really interesting, more, I don't want to say esoteric, but more sort of Lynchian sort of horror films that get, a little bit more sort of surreal or whatever. Yeah, it seemed like it was going for a much more sort of, I don't know.
Once there were rules and it had.
Yes.
Tarantino had this great rant about why it was not a successful film as a movie, and I totally agree with what he said. He just said, like, once you apply these rules and once it has a physicality and there's a silver bullet or there's a whatever, it's not interesting anymore.
No, yeah, absolutely. No. And yeah, you're right. It is. And I remember having a vague thought about that criticism of the film, and then I read the Tarantino thing. I was like, "Oh shit, he's absolutely right."
Yeah.
But I still think it was good. Horror to me, sometimes it's hard. You can't, like, from a what's the term? Like, from an art critic standpoint, horror sometimes doesn't abide by the same rules to me, because horror, like comedy. What is horrific to a person is so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
He's scary to you, may not be scary at all to another person. So there's always that battle when you're talking about whether or not a piece of art from a horror film. I'll just keep it in the realm of horror films. A horror film has merit or not, because again, it's so subjective in that way, and the rules are so vague. Like, what is a horror film? It's like the very classic debate is whether or not Silence of the Lambs is a horror film.
Yeah, is Eraserhead a horror movie? That kind of thing.
Yeah, but exactly though. And you see that, like, David Lynch to me is so often way more terrifying and horrific in what he produces, and most of it wouldn't be considered a horror film at all.
Right.
To me, it's better in those ways than most other films that are like straight horror films. But the other thing with horror is that quality, like the very, very nature of what this podcast is about. Movies that are so good they're bad, or movies that are so bad they are just terrible films. Horror films at their very base create an experience. Whether it's an atmosphere or it's a very, like, a physiological reaction, like a jump scare, which is cheap.
Yeah.
Granted, that is a cheap way to make a story, but
effective but cheap.
What is horror, like, can be just boiled down to a mood or a response. And there are films, and I think that It Follows is a prime example, where despite its failings as a piece of narrative, piece of art, that it does still, the majority of the film, it has this great atmosphere. It does have.
I don't think it's a failure of a movie. I still recommend it to people that ask for good modern horror. I'm talking like we're saying inside baseball. I think as you and I, we can talk about that, or Tarantino being a film nut, and like understand that we're not saying it's a bad film. It's frustrating that it couldn't get that last hurdle and be perfect.
Because if you love something, it's like I love comic books my entire life, and I love them for the spectrum that they're at, from Art Spiegelman to fucking Rob Liefeld. I love comic. I love superhero things. I love slice of life stuff, and I just love what the medium is. Mm-hmm. But so often, the things that get exposed to the general public, you're like, but it's not just this, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no,
I think one of the successes, anyways, I'm way off topic, but when it comes to like horror as an example, is that some of these films, like like The Conjuring, so like the James Wan sort of franchises, The Conjuring,
Conjuring-verse.
Yeah, and I appreciate all those films, but like It Follows, it's like there's this handful of films that sort of get a lot of attention and people enjoy them, but you know, because you watch this shit every day or whatever, that there's way more, there's still so much better stuff happening.
Yeah.
And likewise, and this to answer your original question, so I was sort of super bummed out about these films. And, you know, again, it's like there's horror films being made every day, but there's only a small handful that are probably good. And by good, I mean by the most, you know, sort of agreed upon standards of what good cinema is. But these are the ones that everybody was sort of raving about. I was like, I don't like any of these, or at least I just wasn't as satisfied with them. Again, I think Midsommar and Us were both really well-made films up until the point where they stopped being well-made films. But so
you're gonna
anyway,
have
so
to
I
buy me a
super-
beer and convince me that Midsummer's ending wasn't solid. Well, but we won't do that right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to talk to people about it, and I can give you my great rant about why I hated it. But so I went through all this, and then I sat down, and my wife had gone to bed, she had to leave. She was doing overnight, and I sat down and watched a movie that we had started watching together. She finished because I fell asleep because I'm an old man, and she loved, and it was a movie called The Ritual. Or no, I'm sorry, The Apostle.
Oh, I watched that just recently.
What do you think of it?
I'm into the whole folk horror kind of, the new resurgence of the Wicker Man, Blood on Satan's Claw, that whole Witchfinder General, that whole world. Yeah. I'm into it. I didn't love it. I thought it was super well made. I thought the acting was great. I thought there was something just didn't gel in the whole thing. I enjoyed it. I'd say if you like horror, it's worth checking out, but it didn't become greater than the sum of its parts to me. I don't know why.
That's fair, but you are wrong. Well, I fucking loved it. I thought it was...
No, I liked it. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm just saying I didn't love it. I did like it a lot, though.
I'll tell you one thing I really appreciate, and that this movie did, I think, incredibly well. Well, so I'm a big fan of when you get into the supernatural, especially anything dealing with the occult or things like Lovecraftian stuff, I want that shit to be dark. Mm-hmm. Like if you bring magic into a movie, especially if it's horror, that shit needs to feel like, it needs to be as visceral as possible. Mm-hmm. Like you should clearly be able to smell blood and shit as you're watching it, or have that thing. And I thought that film did that incredibly well. I thought the whole
visceral
reveal was very well done. And it was unsettling in a way that's so rare to see films now, which is sort of what the hell is that art film? It's all based on the cycle, based on the Christian. It's an art film. It's really fucked up. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's like God. I talking about
Mother.
Yes, I think so. No, but I did enjoy that. No, this is like an actual, it's not a film as a sort of a film performance art. It's like high concept art piece. It's all black and white, super grainy. Like it's all based on sort of there's a famous still. It's the woman's face and her mouth is open incredibly long. I'm embarrassed. I can't think of the name of it. It's very, if you see a fucking heavy metal band, they do like the montage music videos are just terrible. Or like a lot of can you finish this video on YouTube? And they just do like really silly.
Are you talking about that thing that looks, it's like Kronos, and it's like this like metaphor for the birth of like the old Greek gods? Oh, that thing's fucking disturbing. What is that called? I know exactly what you're talking about.
But the point is that is truly horrifically unsettling, because it's so profane in just, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it had that, which I really appreciated, but also one of the weird things, especially considering the very nature of what horror films are supposed to be, violence so often, even in decent horror films, is played rather cartoonish. Which I'm a fan. I mean, God, like my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Jason slams a person in a sleeping bag against a tree until they're dead. Just fantastic. But so rarely is violence committed by one person onto another person in film played for, as grounded as I think it can be. I think Fight Club is really great for that reason. If you remember the scene in Fight Club where I can't think of the main character's name, but he's beating up the kid Angel Face.
Jared Leto.
Yeah, and so up until that point, everything is very sort of
light and
kind of real, but it's still like it's crunchy and it's sort of romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And then that sound of that wet
side of beef sound of just brutal beating. Yeah, definitely.
There's a hardness to it, like you're hitting a coconut against a table, and there's there's something in our brains, I think, that tells us when something is more real. There's a sort of like lizard brain part of our existence that we know when something is real violence or a approximation of real violence. And the point is, I thought that movie did that amazing. On top of it just being very well shot, and it's a fantastic collection of actors. And the point is that I got excited about it. And I was like, it is funny because, again, just like every other generation, there are great horror films that make it to cinema and get a lot of attention. And then there are great and sometimes even better horror films that get released to nowadays our version of direct-to-video streaming services that just kind of fall under the radar and only 4 people watch them. But the point is that all this exists. And yeah, I do think we are living in a horror renaissance as a result. I do think sometimes the wrong films get the attention. I think that's been true of cinema or, film in general since its inception. So
yeah,
I don't know if that's really a criticism.
I just feel like I wonder sometimes if just the broad resurgence or rise in horror over the last 20 years, just because like coming with the internet, like the more people are aware of the reality of our world and the life that we live in, the more woke we get, the more we have to like turn towards something as some kind of like, I don't know, some kind of balm or some kind of like it seems more familiar or comforting. I mean, you can make the whole zombie thing. I mean, you're a comics fan, so you probably read Walking Dead when I did before, a couple years before it was a TV show. And, I'm sure you're like I am. You're probably sick to fucking death of zombies 2 years ago when it was just 8 spinoffs and, mom birthday cards had them on them and shit. And just like, but there's a reason, right? There's the thing right now is The Witch, right? Witches are fucking huge right now. I still don't know why. I think it might be a technological response, like a response to technology, like invading every part of our lives. That's why like the folk horror thing is popular too. Like this kind of like just becoming pagan again, like just getting back to earth and our kind of magic and pagan roots. I think that's what the witch thing is, but I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right. At least that's got to be, a very large vein of where that interest is coming from. I think witches have to do a lot with the, this idea that, women's voices are becoming sort of more listened to, and that, the marginalized are having a lot more say now culturally than pretty much ever.
Wow.
And I think that witches are the perfect vehicle for that sense of a woman reclaiming not only her personal sense of power, but also her power in, society. But you're also looking at, I think witches sort of on a very deep level relate back to a woman's sexuality and her sexual power. And just also that ambition, I think the witch, so I can get snobby about horror as a genre, but I'm not snobby when it comes to film. I am happy to like as many things as possible. And I think The Witch is one of those films that deserves all the credit it gets. I think it is just a great fucking movie. I can't wait to see Lighthouse.
I know.
I think, but I think that the very ending of that movie, I remember I had a conversation with my wife about it. Because I remember being sad. Like, there's elements of that movie that really bummed me out. People die in that movie that I felt like there was a communication that they deserved to die. Like the poor dad. Now, was her dad a flawed character in the film? Yeah, absolutely. Sure. He wasn't an evil man. You know what I mean? Not like he was weak, but he wasn't, you know.
No, I follow you. Like what her being lifted up and elevated and empowered at the end the violence that happened to those around her wasn't necessitated, right? Is that what you're saying? Like I just rewatched this with my wife hadn't seen it, and we just bought tickets for the Lighthouse, so I watched The Witch with her for the second time and still love it. And but yeah, I was kind of thinking about that same thing in the last act. Like it is not, I don't want to say unnecessarily brutal, but yeah, all those characters don't necessarily deserve what they get.
No, and I think, but that's a struggle sometimes I have. That's actually goes into some, which again we won't get into, but it in some ways goes back to my issues with Midsummer, and also similar to what my wife felt about Hereditary, which I actually did like the ending to. But there's this concept, especially in American horror films, that there's a moral play at work. The good people live and the bad people die, or the opposite is true, and it's truly horrible because the bad people die and the good people live. It's,
yes.
You know, it's funny games, or it's, you know, whatever. But I think what we're happening now is horror is sort of looking at, you know, things are, morality isn't black and white, and that what is their character's name? Is it Prudence? What is their character's name? The main character, Witch.
In The Witch, Thomason.
Was it
Thomason?
Thomason. It's sort of like, it's a very contemporary. I think that there's a very contemporary viewpoint there, which is fuck 'em, I'm getting mine, you know. And it's like, it's not, you know, they don't matter. What matters is that this woman had a choice to make. The devil offered her this dope shit, and she's like, all right, yeah, let's go for it, because my life is going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't, my life was destined to be terrible anyway.
Servitude, yeah.
Well, yeah, and just living on this shithole farm that my dad has no ability to manage, you know what I mean, with these terrible brothers and sisters.
I mean, he was going to sell her off, though, to someone in the village. She was going to be a servant. So she made a choice, and I think she had every right to make that choice.
And I think it's a beautiful, I mean, it's fucked up in its way, but again, like, you know, as just, you know, causing a visceral reaction, feeling, you know, sort of invested in the story and the characters, and what a fucking great ending that was too. But yeah, anyway, so that was a great film. I love Mandy. Great.
Yeah. Did you like his first movie? I think I'm the only one that likes his first film.
Yeah. So Black Rainbow, or is it
Beyond the Black Rainbow? Yeah.
Beyond the Black Rainbow. I didn't finish it. I love the visual style of it.
The pacing, the lack of plot.
It's like a lot of those films that it's inspired by, it's boring as shit.
Yeah.
It's not boring because it's not well made, just boring because it's very slow.
Yeah.
And it's psychedelic, which oftentimes means that it's just, you know,
self-indulgent in the pacing and the
yeah.
And I totally was all in on it. I totally get when people don't like it. How do you feel about my current favorite horror director besides Eggers, and I'm so excited for The Lighthouse, but my current favorite is Oz Perkins. Have you seen any of his stuff?
What are his films?
So he's Anthony Perkins' son, and he made The Blackcoat's Daughter with Kiernan Shipka. And, so that's on Netflix. So and he made a film for Netflix called I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which is a ghost story.
That I don't remember. I mean, I remember liking it. I don't remember. I didn't have super strong feelings about it. I thought visually it was really cool. I thought story structure was really tight, but I feel like it's definitely something I need to go back and rewatch. I remember, like, again, it definitely was building a kind of, I don't want to say throwback atmosphere, but it felt kind of like horror films of the past where it was really focused on creating a mood.
Yes. So, yeah, that's what I was going to say was I've read some interviews with him, and he's not as interested in plot. He's kind of going for like what he calls them mood essays. So, I mean, each of his films is like, so like The Black Coat's Daughter, I'm pretty sure you're going to love it, but it's just about loss. So, like, it has a narrative, it has a story, and it has a narrative structure, and it's whatever, but it's definitely clear, like, he's just kind of riffing on an emotion, and everything is pointed towards exploring that emotion. Where story sometimes comes second, but I think you like The Black Coat's Daughter better than I Am the Pretty Thing. I love them both, but everyone seems to love The Black Coat's Daughter more. And he has a new film coming out, that Gretel and Hansel, which I'm not super stoked on just what I've seen, but I love him so much. I know it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on what we've already talked about, I mean, I do like, it's hard because there are aesthetics that I used to really love that I sort of feel like and I don't want to talk negatively with people who do appreciate it, but there's certain aesthetics that I feel like I used to like very like sort of on the nail aesthetics or styles that I feel like kind of I've had enough of and sort of kind of moving past a little bit just in terms of where my interest or appreciation lay. But I thought that the trailer for Hansel and Gretel looked amazing, but it does sort of play into some of that. There was a famous like fashion photographer, or not fashion photographer, like art, just an art photographer, but he kind of had a very specific visual style, and he used a lot of like, I'm thinking it's like The Cell. What's that gentleman's name? The film director who did The Fall.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. He directed the Losing My Religion video, I think, as well. Very kind of tableau, like these really ornate.
Yes, everything is sexy and dark. Yes. So, and the trailer for Hansel and Gretel very much had that kind of thing going. A lot of vomiting hair. That, which again is very striking, but it definitely plays into a certain vibe, and it goes into sort of the folk horror vibe. But I thought the trailer looked great. So, and I'm very curious. The actress who's playing the witch, she's fantastic. What is her name?
I'm not sure who that is. I recognized her.
You've seen her. I mean, she's been in a lot of stuff. I believe she's French, but I could be entirely wrong. I think maybe I just assumed she's French. But she's been in a handful of stuff. And what's really interesting is that I think she's just not wearing a lot of makeup. I think she's I think a pretty cool move. I think she's scary just because she has an interesting face.
Yeah.
And she's kind of going natural for it, which I think is really fucking awesome. That looked really cool to me, and I will definitely. And his name is what, Perkins?
Oz. I think his name's like Osgood, but he just goes by Oz, like Wizard of Oz.
It's a fucking great name, man.
Yeah. And Tarsem Singh was the director you were thinking of. That did The Cell. That's cool.
That's trash.
It's garbage, folks.
To avoid fainting, keep repeating.
It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie.
Sights and sounds far beyond anything you've tested. Take as much as you can.